It looks like it's actually working tonight. All right. So at 7:04 p.m., we'll call to order this special joint meeting of the Easton, Reading, and Region 9 Boards of Education being held remotely pursuant to Executive Order 7B, and also call to order the Reading Board of Education for this special meeting. Then I'll ask John to please call Easton to order and Todd to call Region 9 to order.
Call Easton Board of Education to order at 7:05 p.m.
And I'll call Region 9 to order at 7:05. Do we need to roll call off who's in attendance for the record?
That would be helpful.
All right. For Region 9, we've got Mike, Juliet, Gwen, Mary Lee, Todd.
For Easton, we have Gretchen Goldstein, Jeff Parker, Devin Weibel, and John Stinson.
For Reading, we have Mike Hoffman, John Riley, Chris Hocker, Chris Parkin.
For Region 9, we can also add Karen. She's in the waiting room.
All right. The first item of business on the agenda is discussion and possible action referendum results. And this item is simply at this point to report that the budgets in both towns and for all three districts were approved by the voters yesterday. And so on behalf of the three boards, thank you to the voters in both towns for your support. Which brings us immediately to item 2B, which is the process for hiring the Director of Technology and Digital Learning, including the possible creation of a personnel search committee. So, because the budgets have passed, we now can enter into the phase of looking for and hiring a director, which is an executive level position, who will be reporting directly to the superintendent. And what we'd like to do is move forward with the creation of a personnel search committee of the whole so that we can go ahead and start the process of hiring that individual. And so what I'm putting on the screen is an adaptation of the motion that was adopted by the three boards in May when we appointed ourselves as a personnel search committee of the whole and appointed a steering committee as a subcommittee of that for the purpose of identifying the superintendent. This is not a proposed motion so much as a starting off point, but if somebody wants to make that motion to start discussion as to what the process should be of appointing a PSC, I'd be happy to entertain that starting in Reading. I see Chris and a second from John, I thought. Thank you. Easton?
In Easton? I see Gretchen. And sorry, second. Devin, are you? And Devin seconding? Yes.
Same for Region 9. A motion, a second. I need verbal. I can't see everybody. So looking for a motion, the same motion for Region 9.
Almost.
Is that Mike? And second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is on the floor for discussion amongst all three boards. As we don't have all 21 tonight, I don't think we need to isolate the conversation between any of the boards. I think it's open for discussion from anybody as to what their thoughts are as to how to move forward with the creation of the personnel search committee, whether this approach is sufficient or whether there's any tweaks that would want to be made to this. Chris?
Yeah, and my motion was for the purpose of moving things along. I think the threshold question here can be isolated to the words identifying a finalist in point 1. I think philosophically, it is at best an open question as to whether for a position like this, it is the role of the boards to make the final decision. Now, you know, I don't want to get into a, you know, long harangue one way or the other on this. You know, I have views, but the fact is there is no precedent one way or the other. I think it's a good thing because we have launched into selection of executive level positions without clarity in the past. And to the extent that, you know, we need to get clarity one way or the other, this is a good thing. Okay, so that's part one. Part two is I happen to believe that at the end of the day, the selection of a member of the superintendent's cabinet should be ultimately that of the superintendent, and that the boards have a role in, to use an old term from the US Constitution, advising and consenting. But that at the end of the day, to sort of take that prerogative away from the superintendent as the final decision maker is asking for a lot of turnover in our superintendent position. I mean, I feel that strongly about it. I think that the process we went through in having the boards determine the final compensation package and all the rest of it, I think that's fine. But I think in terms of you know, who ultimately makes the final call, and that would leave the superintendent the right to push it back to the boards. That's fine too. But to flat out state, in effect, by the way, the superintendent has no say in this, because that's what this resolution says, I think is a mistake. So I would look for wording that says something like, you know, assisting the superintendent in identifying a finalist, just something that simple. That would at least leave it to be interpreted as a collaborative process between the boards and the superintendent, which is what I think we want.
I agree with that. I think the people that know the position, or the person that knows the position best and the team the best, and the response, like what kind of person they're trying to hire is the superintendent. So while I think the boards will do a great job of being assisting in that and helping to narrow the pool and make a decision, I think the superintendent is the person who kind of works with the person and make sure that they're fulfilling the mission of the position and of our 3 districts. So the superintendent should have more ownership.
Would it be reasonable, Chris? I was really struck by sort of collaboration, sort of collaborating sort of term you used there. Would it be reasonable to say something like, and charge the committee with collaborating, you know, sort of collaborating with the superintendent in identifying a finalist for the role? Simply adding that language.
I think my words were assisting the superintendent.
Yeah.
You get where I was going on
Yeah.
that. It's not like I had a pre-written script. So,
Yeah.
but the concept, that's the concept that I feel strongly that we need to get across here, and that in the absence of that, this can be interpreted as that the superintendent's role is minimized.
Yeah, or non-existent.
No, and we can vote this up or down. We can vote the wording up and down. If the boards feel that, no, it's absolutely the board's prerogative, then we can take a vote on that, and I'll vote no, and that's the way it goes. But I wanted to stake out that my position.
Yeah, I think Chris, the identifying a finalist language lands a little harsher than maybe it's intended to, because it is patterned on this concept that the Personnel Search Committee has no inherent hiring authority or any authority really whatsoever except to recommend. And so the Personnel Search Committee here is recommending something back to the boards, and it finishes its task by identifying the finalist. However, the steering committee that is contemplated here is specifically empowered to collaborate with the superintendent for the purpose of designing and implementing a process for reviewing resumes and interviewing and screening candidates, which yields a considerable amount of expectation back on the partnership with the superintendent to the folks who are contemplated here to be doing sort of the heavy lift. To the extent we anticipate coming to a conclusion where, to the extent that board members are involved in the process of interviewing and advising, consenting, hiring, that would not be all 21 being involved at the same time.
I feel like we always get into this same pattern where we feel the need to create issues before issues even arise. It's kind of absurd to me when we say, we lose superintendents and stuff because they're not allowed to pick your cabinet. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. The boards have always respected and collaborated with the superintendents on hires of this nature. The superintendent is always given all due respect and deference for his or her opinion on the candidates. Creating this on a clear definition as to who gets the final say. I say this all the time. We're all supposed to work together. We all have worked together. It's worked for many years. Where we start to go off the rails is when things are not done properly. And we can go into a whole hour about what is properly. In other words, if you try to hire someone within 1 week and you posted it 3 days in advance and you come and you say, this is the only candidate, you're going to get pushback. That happens. Okay. When you post the job correctly and you have input from other people who may know the community a little deeper than the superintendent who is new to the job, I think that's a great assistance to the superintendent rather than some sort of a detrimental effect where people are telling him or her, who they need to hire. I just think, look, it's the same process we do for everything. The whole board is the full personnel search committee. You take one from each board or two from each board, and you put them on a steering committee. You identify finalists, again, in cooperation or collaboration with the superintendent. It happens all the time. It's not like the boards say, yeah, we're not picking your person. It's just ridiculous that we go into this. Who gets the final say? Hopefully we all agree. That's what we're supposed to do. And I think we have done for many, many years, except when we do this last minute, Andy, this is the only person we have and we have to hire him tomorrow stuff. Otherwise, I think it always has worked out in the past. So again, I think that the document is fine. Take out the part about hiring a search consultant or whatever. I didn't know that. I thought that was something we probably weren't going to do, but who knows? And move on. I think we're just going to make this into something that it's not. And again, when you want to clearly define this and vote on some sort of process, it can always be broken. It's the trust here that is what's most important. And I don't see that there's been any issues, with again, the superintendent having the authority to give great input and have great influence over who the candidate is. Now we can get into whether or not that position has a teaching certificate. So that would fall under the statute that they would fall underneath the superintendent for, everything, evaluation, hiring, firing, all that kind of stuff. Not every cabinet position does fall under that statute. So we have to be careful there. And also, the ultimate authority is with the boards, whether you want to use the philosophy of we have one employee and he or she is in charge of all the rest of the employees in the district. That's fine. But the employee still ultimately works for the boards. And you would think he or she would want to work collaboratively with them and you know, I don't think there's any need to kind of over define this process and go through a crazy lengthy 2-hour discussion as to, you know, whether this comma is in the right place or whether that clause means this. I just think we're just, you know, nitpicking here.
It sounds like we're largely in agreement about this. Do we want to take a swing at making some slight adjustments here?
Yeah, and before we do that, I might ask Dr. Harrison if he has views as to what his preference is for how to basically find the inaugural incumbent for this position, and whether there are any thoughts that he has about an appropriate process or timeline that might inform how we draft this.
Yeah, so thank you. I think that the first question, so I'm thinking back to I think it was the negotiating committee was sort of laying out a process for hiring senior staff in central office. One of the first initial questions is, do we think it makes sense to go with a search firm or not? Kind of go through the process internally. I think for this position, I would not recommend going with a search firm. I think that we'll get a good mix of candidates just from, you know, our own local posting and posting on CT REIT. So that would be the first piece. I think that you know, naturally, I think to you know, we would want to include some kind of performance component as part of the interview and hiring process. So it's, you know, there's a nice balance between what the potential candidates know and then also what they're capable of doing, so that we could get to see a mix of those. And I do think that you know, I like the idea of having the inclusion of board members in the process. I think kind of looking at how that, like what that looks like. So the challenge is having 21 board members if it's a district, but just you know, a typical number of board members. You know, I think having all board members involved is different than when there's 21. So what that balance looks like. I mean, I think that it is true that as a superintendent, this is, you know, the person that I'm supervising, but you know, I mean, I think that it's important to have that the board input as well, and community input. So those are just some of my initial thoughts.
Can I guess I'm exercising my prerogative as a, you know, cranky old boomer here, but you know, like I say, I think it's great to put it down ahead of time and say what, you know, we intend to do. And I'm perfectly happy to be on the wrong side of a vote. It's happened before. But, you know, the bad news about putting things down in writing is that words have meaning. Okay. And so at the end of the day, and I take your point, Chris Parkin, about what it says about the steering committee and collaborating with the superintendent. But there's no question in my mind that point one, and if that's what we want to do, we can do it. Clearly, with the words, with identifying a finalist. Finalist means like there ain't no more. That's what final means. And so
it does, Chris, get to the fundamental question of, at the end of the day,
yeah.
Are the three boards voting to appoint John Doe, the director of technology? Or is Dr. Harrison reporting back, I have hired John Doe as the director of technology, and I'd like you to approve a contract or something else?
Right. And so, you know, I do not think it's a trivial issue, but but on the other hand, I have not found any commas to argue over. I think, you know, the point I'm making is clear. And anytime somebody wants to proceed to a vote and make a decision, it's okay with me. I just wanted to make the point.
John, were you going to propose softer language, a different language?
Charge the committee with collaborating with the superintendent collaborating with the superintendent in identifying a finalist. And then it looks like Dr. Harrison, and I think we all agree we don't need a search consultant. So I think we could strike that entire section. That up to there. Yep. Is there anything else? I mean, is there anything that anybody finds offensive here? It seems like we're all on the same page.
Dr. Harrison,
Riley?
can you talk to how you feel about that change? Because please.
So John, you're talking about the change from,
That John just made, yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with it. So I think that we could spend a lot of time kind of going back and forth and changing the language. I think that, which I don't know is a good use of time. I mean,
Right. I guess before Chris Hager said so, I feel similarly that we've hired you to run the ship, and we're again getting involved at a deeper level than I feel like we need to be.
But you could take it back to charge the committee with advising the superintendent with respect to the identification of a finalist. That's a slightly greater
How do we
delegation.
feel about finalists, plural?
I think that's the steering committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's almost like the steering committee is the real, like the formation of the,
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, the personnel search committee is formed primarily as a procedural mechanism
Right.
to allow the three boards to sit in non-meeting to discuss
Okay.
the process, basically.
Right. That's not where the real work is done. The real work, I mean, this is kind of like,
Yeah.
you know,
Understood. I was
real work's in
misunderstanding.
two, right? So I think the question is whether or not is there disagreement about the role of that steering committee in sort of working through that process? You know, similar to the way that we work through the process.
I have no disagreement with point two.
Yeah, we could take point one all the way back to appoint a personnel search committee for the purpose of identifying a director of digital learning and technology or something completely vanilla, because the work really gets done in point two.
Right.
And that would be fine. Not that I'm calling the shots here. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that better. It just makes the top,
Yep.
just as we were saying, it's forming
Yep.
us to have non-meetings, and then the work's done at the steering
Exactly.
committee below it.
Yep.
There we go.
Is there any controversy about the chair of the personnel search committee? Because I don't think anybody cares. So if somebody does, we can switch that up. Okay.
Oh, do I know that guy? Oh,
So the purposes with the most years of service or who have served on multiple boards is automatically required to be the chair of the personnel search committee.
There's a lot of people not here tonight too. That's also
how
why.
about just the old
We could choose
guy?
them.
How's that?
Okay.
Okay, so having workshopped that, are we comfortable with one being sort of walked back that way and the way that two is currently phrased? Cheryl? Oh, Cheryl needs to be made a co-host, looks like.
Hi, sorry I'm late. Just a question, I think, so I'm catching up here. So the item number 2, the Personnel Search Steering Committee, that's intended on hearing is just a mechanism to allow, as is appropriate, for a body to deliberate on personnel matters, which is allowed, which is permitted, right?
Correct.
So the mechanism is the number of the size of that committee what makes it permissible, or is it the fact that we're talking about personnel issues?
Personnel issues.
Okay, so then I think the group is just agreeing that a smaller group is probably more manageable. So thus the
Right.
practicality of having this.
Yeah, a smaller group should do the heavy lift, basically, is the.
Got it. Okay.
But it's just like when we do the superintendent search.
Yep.
All steering committee members can attend the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
However, non-steering committee members are more just, they view, they don't participate. And then again, when everything is ultimately decided in the end, then typically you have all the boards as the full steering committee again meet again. As
The expectation being that the steering committee folks agree to undertake the commitment of being fully involved beginning to end, and all personnel search committee members have the ability to come and go if they so please.
So essentially, we're establishing a mechanism for the process to be consistent for essentially all of the administrators in central office. So superintendent and all his or her direct reports is what I'm understanding. Right? Because this process is no different than what the 3 boards went through in hiring our superintendent.
I think mechanism is a dirty word, but beyond
Yeah,
that.
and
And
this process is just for the digital learning,
And
right? This is just for this one role.
It does have to be senior people. I mean, that's
Okay.
actually a part of the personnel search committee exemption to FOIA,
Yeah.
is that it has to be for senior executive level personnel.
Okay, got it.
And I think then the personnel search committee can look at the sort of short and long processes that the negotiating committee has put together for hiring, adopt one of those, and sort of be off to the races at this point. Chris?
For the purposes of moving forward, I'd be happy to amend my original motion to put this in as amended with the changes that we've discussed.
Thank you. And John, second. So the original motion is withdrawn, replaced by this from Chris,
Right.
second to John. Easton?
Do I have the same amendment in Easton?
Yes, Devin.
Thank you, Devin. And Gretchen, thank you.
And in Region 9, the same changes, Mike, as the original of the motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to adopt this new version as my motion.
All right. And
Again,
then
I
Mary
will.
Lee, hold on, and Mary Lee for the second.
I will say that again, we kind of knew this in the beginning, but you still haven't answered the $64,000 question, which is the one.
So
Chris,
Mary Lee,
keep coming
will
back.
you change your second to this?
Yes, second.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion is substituted. The substitute motion is on the floor on all 3 boards. Mike, what were you trying to say?
We kind of were in the same place 25 minutes ago or whatever when we first started this. It seemed like those making the motion and those who were pushing for a scripted procedure were again trying to define whether or not the ultimate decision rests with the superintendent or with the boards, and I don't think this answers your question.
Well, I would, as the alleged scriptor of the motion, I would disagree that I'm trying to frame it as anything except trying to move the process forward in some concrete way.
There's many Chris's in the meeting, so I guess what you probably misinterpreted my comment. It seemed that the other Chris was saying that what we needed to do was define ultimately who would have the ultimate last word, so to speak. And I kept saying that I believe it should be more of the collaborative process that we have used in the past. I think there's been other members from the 3 boards that have made similar statements that have said that they think it should be the ultimate authority of the superintendent. But I guess what I'm saying is that this motion is acceptable to me, but it doesn't define that question that you guys keep bringing up. So
Right, I agree. This motion establishes a personnel search committee to move the process forward. It does not solve for the end question of how do you get this across the line, which continues to be a horse that we like to beat to death amongst the 3 boards. It is my hope that as the negotiating committee continues its work in defining what these processes look like, it can bottom out on a recommendation on that question also. Chris?
No, I just want to make it clear. The changes that were made is okay to me, with me, obviously. And I simply wanted to raise the point and see if the wording could be modified slightly for the very purpose of avoiding the $64,000 debate. This allows the process to go forward in a way that we actually haven't done before. We have some modicum of agreement going in as to how this is going to work. Does it answer every question? No, it does not. And I absolutely share Mike's faith that, you know, this can be done in a collaborative and correct manner to everybody's satisfaction. There's no question about that. And as far as I'm concerned, we've achieved that. I'm a happy guy.
Yep.
Thank you. Chris. Todd?
Sorry, just a question on the first item, or the first one, the last sentence. The personnel search committee shall be chaired by the chairperson of the Board of Education.
Then acting as
the chairperson of the 3 boards.
But who is the chairperson of the Board of Education?
So that'll be Reading now. That'll be me.
Oh, I didn't catch that either.
Yeah, chairperson of the Board of Education that's
Then
currently acting
right.
as the chairperson of the 3 boards.
That's why John said, does anybody have an issue with this? Nobody cares.
Who is then acting? If you, but
Right.
Yeah, we should probably
Don't argue.
clarify that, right? That's who's the current chairperson of the joint boards meeting
Yeah.
or something. I don't know.
That's
not
then the 3
clear.
boards.
I'm okay with the intent of it, but we need to probably clarify it.
And typically the steering committee chooses its own chair.
Correct.
I
Correct.
mean, that's typically what.
That's
has
right.
been done.
But the overall personnel search committee would be chaired by
Yeah,
somebody else.
yeah.
Just for simplicity's sake.
That's
Yep.
fine.
Right. So, okay. So the person acting as chairperson. Okay. Thank you.
But does it say in the personnel? It doesn't need to, but I'm just saying it. I don't know that it says that they choose their own.
The steering committee shall be chaired by a
Yes.
member from each.
Oh, I
select
got
board.
it now.
It's in the
Yeah,
last sentence.
didn't read that far yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
All right. Is there any further discussion or questions from anybody? Seeing none, we will call the question starting in Reading where the motion originated. I see Colleen has joined us. Colleen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I don't think Steph has joined. Nope. Chris?
yes,
I vote yes, and the motion carries 5-0. John?
Call the question in Easton. Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you. Gretchen?
Yes.
Thank you. Devin?
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion carries 4-0.
No.
And we'll call a question in Region 9. Cheryl,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Juliet,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Karen, Karen.
Gotta make Karen co-host. Hang on. She can't
Just
unmute.
asked her to unmute. She should be able to go now.
Sorry, now I got it.
Okay.
I'm on my phone. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mary Lee
Yes.
and Todd, yes. I think Maureen's on. I don't think she joined. All right, so it carries in Region 9, 7-0.
Thank you. So the motion is adopted by all 3 boards, and the Personnel Search Committee and Steering Committee are formed. As a practical matter, because of the way that this position was structured and discussed throughout the budget season, Dr. Harrison has already produced and distributed to the board over the past several months a job description for the position. And so it will be my hope that we could agree to allow Dr. Harrison and the administration to post the job as we get the personnel search committee and steering committee underway, so that the applicant pool can begin to be developed as we start to form the framework from the personnel search committee. I don't think that requires any formal direction or action, but I would look for any objection in case anyone has concerns with that approach. Seeing no objection, I think it's safe to say that Dr. Harrison, please go ahead and get the job posted pursuant to the roles and responsibilities that were articulated during the budget process. If there are no further discussions in this, what I would ask is members of the board who are interested in serving on the personnel search committee to please reach out to your respective chairs, and we can then appoint members to that committee in the next couple of days and get the work of the personnel search committee underway. That concludes item 2B. Sorry, the steering committee.
Steering committee, yeah.
Yeah.
We're already the search committee.
Thank you.
Don't have a choice.
So now that concludes item 2B on the agenda, which brings us to item 3, which is public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak, please indicate so by raising your hand in the participants window with the reactions button. I'm going to take my screen share down. I don't see anybody. I don't know, John, Todd, if you see anybody.
I do not.
Okay. If there's no public comment, we'll move on to board member comment. We'll start in Reading. Anyone in Reading? I see none. On to Easton.
Any comment in Easton?
Okay. On to Region 9.
Region 9, any board member comment?
All right, seeing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, starting in Reading. Mike, is there a second? John, any objection? No objection. Reading is adjourned at 7:42. Look to Easton.
Motion to adjourn in Easton.
Motion. Move.
Thank you, Devin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor? Very good. No objection. We are adjourned at 7:42 p.m.
All right, and Region 9, motion to adjourn.
So moved, Cheryl.
Cheryl, thank you. Second,
Gwen.
Gwen, thank you. All in favor? Aye. All right, carries. We're adjourned at 7:42.